Welcome, it's Stefan here from Guitar Gallery. Today, Michael Watts.
Hello.
What a privilege, man. We've been looking forward to this for a very, very long time.
As have I, Stefan. It's good to see you.
I think we've met in 2018.
It was 2018, and it was my first time in South Africa. I was here to visit my friends at Casimi Guitars.
Yeah.
But at that point, I did not own one of their instruments yet. Yeah. It would be several years before that actually happened, and in fact I'm here to collect this guitar, which we'll talk about later. And yeah, that goes all the way back to 2018, which was kind of when you were first starting as well.
That's right.
So I've seen you grow as well for these past few years, and seeing some of the beautiful brands that you've added. You know, I mean, when we first met, I think you had Martin, Larrivée, and Loudon, right?
That's right.
So still very much the early days.
Yeah.
And now you've added Santa Cruz and Eastman and Bourgeois, and some of my favorite brands. So yeah, it's just great to see.
I still remember. I mean, even in this room, that performance you did here was just one of my favorite finger style shows I've ever seen. I remember I asked you a lot of questions, and one comment you made, and I really tried to implement that. I spoke to you about, when we record videos, what do you get, the pro, do you get the normal guy? And you said never speak down to your client, and that's actually something that I've implemented, and I think our clients have really appreciated that. That's one thing I remember. We're standing outside and asking you that, and I'm like, okay.
Well, it was a lesson that I had to learn. It wasn't something that came naturally. I thought, back in when I was a guitar dealer and regularly doing demos, I thought, well, what are 90% of the guitar buying public interested in? So my first demos were, a bit of strumming in open tuning, a little bit of gentle fingerstyle, and maybe a little bit of drop tunings. But then I realized that it was about the guitar rather than the audience, and I wanted to show what these things could do. And by not showing that, I felt I was doing them a disservice. Yeah. So I thought, what, we'll change that around. And I remember that conversation very well as well. And the videos that you've been making are beautiful. You've got some great players on there. I love the sound. I love the way they're shot. Yeah. And man, congratulations.
Yeah, I think technology has definitely made it easier. To do things like that. If I look back at some of my earlier videos, very embarrassed, but they've got good tracking.
You've got to start somewhere. You've got to start somewhere. Yeah. And you know what? My ethos has always been that with each video, I want to improve just 1%. If I can get 1%, then I know it's steady progress. Yeah. And occasionally, on a great day, I may get 3 or 4%. And I'm like, come on. Yeah. But it is incremental, and everything develops, and you will. You've got to remain open to happy accidents, and maybe one day you'll find something that just it's brand new and it works. It elevates it just a little bit. The main thing is consistency. You've got to make sure that you're consistent not only in the settings, from the sort of practical point of view, but consistent in the intent with which you're doing it. Yeah. Make sure that it's done with love and appreciation, and you always do that. So man.
But maybe we can start with the Casimi.
Let's have a look at this, shall we?
And maybe I think if you can take us through the specs of this guitar to start with, and then I've got quite a few questions.
So I'm glad you asked, Stefan. This is a Casimi C1 model. It is their smallest shape. They do C2, C3, C4, and a great big baritone as well. I recently have got into smaller bodied instruments, and my guitar from Jason Costal is almost a sort of miniature modified dreadnought with 12 frets, but it maintained a dreadnought depth. Now what's happening here is the C1. But if you look at the rims, it's the same depth almost as the C2. And what that's allowed them to do is put almost as much, like a little bit less air in the chamber than a much bigger guitar. But we have a smaller soundboard. And what a smaller soundboard does is it responds more immediately. A big dreadnought, you can hear it. It's nanoseconds we're talking here, but the human brain is capable of processing it. So it takes a little longer for a bigger top to flex. What we have here, we've got all the air in the chamber, so a lot of power, but we've also got the immediacy of a smaller footprint in the soundboard.
So would you say, just if I can use the reference, would you say this is a double O size?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, double O is sort of 12 fret triple O, let's say. But, you know, the difference between double O and triple O and OM is dictated by the scale length. So I'm sure you're the same, Stefan, but the first question I used to ask when dealing with someone who's interested in a bespoke instrument is what scale length you're looking at, because that dictates everything. And it was the first question that we answered, Matthew, Matthias and myself. So it's a 25-inch scale length, which is the sweet spot for me on a 12-fret guitar. The joy of a 12-fret instrument, and Casimi only make 12-fret guitars, is that the bridge is right here in the sweet spot of the lower bout, and that means it can drive the top very effectively indeed. So we've got African Blackwood here on the back and sides with a beautiful bronze inlay, and I'll tell you more about our thoughts with that later on. Koa bindings, and on the front of the sides, I should say, it's a double-sided instrument, so there's Wenge inner sides under the African Blackwood, and then the front, the lid, the soundboard. The most important bit, arguably, is moon-harvested Swiss spruce. So the most important thing, perhaps from the outline, is the fact that this is the first non-cutaway design that Casimi have made. And I asked for that. It was interesting. I think they were a little skeptical at first, because especially Matthew, because the Casimi design, he first approached Matthias with that design because it was his dream guitar, and he was like, can you make this? And it was only after they made the first one that they realized that they had a workable, really great design. But what they hadn't taken into account was the fact that they never made these guitars to be easy to create. This is not an easy guitar to make at all. And we've both experienced instruments at the very top of modern luthiery. This stands alone in terms of construction techniques. It really is incredible.
I mean, if I look at what your other guitars that you play, this is as different as it can be. Am I right?
Well, yes, you are.
From a tonewood perspective.
Well, from a tonal perspective, yeah, very much so. I mean, the conversation about tonewoods is a cyclic, almost, how many angels can you get dancing on the head of a pin? What's the sound of one hand clapping? It's a conversation that just goes round and round and round.
I mean, Matthias always reminds me that it depends on the luthier plays a massive part. He can build bass into maple back and sides. He can, a lot depends on that. But it is interesting that it's very different to what you're currently playing, which would make sense, because I would guess you don't want a similar sound necessarily.
Well, the thing is, Stefan, I wanted a typical Casimi sound. Jason Costal's guitars are divine, wonderful things. I didn't want Matthew and Matthias to feel like there was pressure to make a sound from the Samogi school. That's not, I've got that. And Jason's voicing is a very beautiful and very inspiring thing. However, the first time I played a Casimi guitar, it left an impression. That was 10 years ago. In fact, it was 10 years ago this year. And I played a C2. They'd come over to London. They'd put this C2 in my hands. And I remember the first note just roared. And I thought, I thought I'd heard a lot of instruments. I had, but I never heard that before. So in terms of the sound that I was looking for, I mean, I want two things out of an instrument. First of all, I want a response that is immediate. And there's a lot of talk about responsivity, and I think it became something of a buzzword when Irvin Samogi launched his books in 2009. The responsive guitar. Well, what does that mean? In my mind, it means two things. First of all, it means that you get a huge amount of sound from the instrument with minimum effort. That's the first thing. So just the lightest playing will make the guitar sit up and pay attention and really start pumping. And the second thing to my mind is that the guitar should respond to the player's touch immediately in terms of dynamics. So it should be able to go from very soft to, fortissimo at the at the player's desires. As soon as you do that, then the guitar has to keep up. Now, I don't use a lot of speed in what I do, but I do use a lot of dynamics and a lot of different colors. So I'm looking for not only headroom in terms of volume, but I'm also looking for timbre spectrum. So that's the sort of the deepest, warm, rich, fruity notes, all the way down to the trebly stuff. So sometimes I'll play a chord that starts here with a deeper bass, and then with the right hand it finishes all the way by the bridge. So what I've done there is essentially use the maximum amount of the timbre spectrum within one chord.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy the sort of Ponticello approach right by the bridge. So it's kind of like having the bridge pickup on a Telecaster going. I mean, that's a little too metallic for what I do normally, but just sort of. I will do some examples later on.
Yeah. And so one thing I was, on my way down from Joburg, I was reflecting a little bit on the Casimi guitars, and one thing I want to get your opinion on is, you just mentioned, obviously, there's the Irvin Samaji influence in North America, and I think Casimi is a little bit isolated in that sense where they used to work for Mark Maingard, who had some exposure overseas, but I think it was, in the 70s or 80s, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think fingerstyle was necessarily played that much. I may be totally wrong. I think it was more traditional kind of sound that he was exposed to. So it's very interesting that they've built this wonderful guitar, being isolated, I would say, in a way. And I would guess that, and you've mentioned it earlier, but I guess that brings uniqueness to this guitar.
Yeah. What's really interesting, Stefan, is the amount of influence that certainly over the past sort of 5 or 6 years, Casimi are having in other luthiers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sure.
So certainly you're starting to see. The first thing you'll see is the visual flourishes. You'll start seeing people trying to adopt this same sort of boldness of line without really understanding what it means. And you'll see that particularly in the work of. You'll see that particularly in the influence that Michi Matsuda has over the luthier scene. People are falling over themselves to copy Michi's rosette and his headstock designs and his inlays and that sort of thing. What they don't seem to realize is that what they're copying is Michi from like 10 years ago. He's already over the horizon.
Okay. Yeah.
He's gone.
Yeah.
He's doing stuff today that we can't even fathom.
Sure.
And so I'm seeing a lot of that kind of appropriation of his work, but I'm also starting to see a visual influence from Casimi guitars in the work of other luthiers all over the world, North America, Europe, Asia, and here in South Africa too. It happens.
And from a tonal point, because I think you do such a great job in explaining tone. It's always a difficult thing for me to explain to people. But what would you say is the one unique thing in the tone of a Casimi that one stands out?
That's a very good question. And you're right. It's not easy to talk about tone. We are passionate about acoustic guitars, particularly luthier-built acoustic guitars. And as such, it's very nice to have a shared vocabulary with which to convey experience. People who are passionate about different things tend to have developed that. So the people that are interested in timepieces or cars or wine or cigars or whatever it happens to be, they've all got a language that they share. The guitar is very different, and especially an instrument of this caliber or the other luthiers that are out there. It's very rare to have a shared experience. So it would be rather like me saying, "Oh, I had this extraordinary chicken yesterday, at a braai." And it was wonderful. I don't know what they put on it, but there was something I've never tried before. There was a little bit of spice. And I'm explaining this to some poor bugger in London who's never eaten anything other than McNuggets. And he's like, well, I don't know how you can get so excited about chicken. I can't imagine it being any more interesting than the chicken I've experienced. That's taking it to absurdity. But you're right, there's a lack of a language that we can employ. People tend to use adjectives like smoky or velvety or creamy or buttery. I mean, I don't want to get any butter on my fretboard, but in terms of what Matthew and Matthias do, there's a power there. There is a focus, an articulation. I am used to an instrument with a beautifully supportive bass. It sounds like a double bass, like boom, boom. So then it just sort of melts along in the background, and that's wonderful. This sounds like a Steinway piano. It's like, and that, well, you'll know as much as anybody, with great power comes great responsibility. It's not easy to, unless you hit this absolutely right, it's going to start complaining. So you've got to make sure that your technique is up there. I've been getting used to this instrument over the past 48 hours that I've been here in South Africa, and there is an absolute exact feel to this guitar that I've only ever experienced in the work of luthiers like Michael Greenfield or John Monteleone, the archtop builder. Well, archtop and flat top builder. There is not a bad note on here. There is this just incredible, it's not just balance, but already, and it's a very green guitar, it doesn't, this is a box that doesn't know it's a guitar yet. But already the voice is starting to mature. So I did a video of the first notes. I played on it, and it's really revealing because what you hear is this kind of sort of a stringy sound, and then the box sort of wakes up, and you hear this sort of coming up to behind it. Oh wow, that is incredible. What will happen as the instrument matures is those things will sort of come together into a more cohesive whole, and it's already happening. I mean, I've now played it in several contexts. I managed to play it right here for the first notes, and then I took it back to my little place in Fish Hook where I've been staying, and I played it there, and the sound was already a lot mature. It changed drastically in 24 hours. Then I was on, I did a radio interview at Fine Radio Cape Town, and got to hear it for the first time in a treated studio. Oh, that was wonderful. Really wonderful. A dry room, and just to hear the thing purring. Well, I think another thing that characterises the work of Matthew and Matthias is sheer headroom. And by that I don't mean that I can thrash the thing. Well, I suppose I could if I wanted to, but it means that I can express myself and still know, even if I'm sort of hovering along, there's so much more to play with if I want to really dig in with the dynamics. So Casimi Guitars are a two-man team, obviously, and Matthew Rice is the man in charge of design and the line of the guitars, and Matthias Roux is the main, and Matthias Roux is the creator, the guy who gets his hands into the body as well. But what Matthew really brings is the aesthetic, the visual side of things. He's the Minister for Aesthetics at Casimi Guitars. The ornamentation that's on this instrument is part of a in-depth collaboration with Matthew, which is something that you can enjoy as the owner of a Casimi instrument. You don't have to do this. This would look out of place on a Martin. It would look out of place on a Loudon. You need the context for it to work in. So what we've gone for is a style of ornamentation that reflects the two themes around this guitar. So the first theme is man and nature together, humanity and nature, perhaps I should say. And that is reflected in, well, first of all, the instrument itself. Humanity and nature is the primary theme of guitar making. You know,
and if I can jump in there, one thing that always struck me about Casimi is the design is like or the creativity is absolutely off the chart. It's next
Completely.
level.
Yes.
But it doesn't overpower the functionality of the instrument.
Absolutely.
It's just how they managed to build such a classy instrument.
It's a delicate balance.
But it remains simple in a way.
Absolutely right. Yeah, it's economy of style, and it's something that I really appreciate. So we've got humanity and nature, and then we've also got a theme of recovery, of repair, of healing.
Okay.
And that is shown in these inlays here. So this, well, I should start by saying, so when I was a young man, I visited Japan. I fell in love with Japanese culture and music and food and just everything about the place I thought was magical. And there is a beautiful Japanese art called Kintsugi, which is the repairing of a piece of ceramic that is broken using gold. I think Kintsugi, if I remember rightly, translates directly as the beautiful scar. So what's happened is you've got this beautiful vase or something, you've dropped it by accident, take it to a Kintsugi artist, and they will repair it with essentially using gold paste as a glue. And what you've got then is the same thing, but it's been beautified by what happened to it. You know, so I think that as a theme of healing is really quite poetic.
Sure.
You know, and it's difficult because out of respect for the artwork, out of respect for the art form itself, we didn't want to just steam in there and go, right, here's we're going to call it the Kintsugi. We're going to do like gold bits or maple bits or something like that. So Matthew Rice, being the artist that he is, he got a load of bits of African Blackwood and started filling them in with gold paste in the same way as they do with the pottery to see how it worked. And I thought it was very successful. I thought it was beautiful, but he wanted to take it to a different level. So what he did was create this beautiful bronze, almost network, and then he put it in the sound hole, in the headstock, and there's also a larger piece here, which could be, well, I mean, it's the back strip, but it could be a lightning bolt, it could be a repaired crack, it could be the delta of a river. And bronze is important to me for two reasons. First of all, going back to humanity and nature, it was the first alloy, you know, so it's a vital part of our development as a species. And bronze is a vital part of ancient Greek culture. You know, it's mentioned in the Homeric poetry. It's mentioned in the Homeric poetry, the Iliad, the Odyssey, bronze armor, bronze swords, all this sort of stuff. So that's why we chose those materials. Like I said, this is entirely optional. You don't have to do it. I get very slightly cagey about this idea of guitars as art. You know, I really don't like the expression playable art. You hear it a lot. You know, like, oh, it's a work of art and it's a D35. You're like, yeah, okay, it's kind of functional. It's a beautiful design. The Strat is a beautiful design. A Zippo lighter or an Alessi orange squeezer is a beautiful design, but it's not necessarily a work of art. I think these are only works of art once you cut the strings off. Then it's sculpture. Okay. Stick it on a stand, look at it, great. The moment it's got strings on it, it's more than that. It is a tool. And we need to remember that. I have worked with and appreciated the work of a number of the greatest guitar makers living today. You know, people like Irvin, Jason, Michael Greenfield, John Montalio, and Linda Manza, Chris Mirabella. I guess I've had my sense of aesthetics very finely developed by exposure to these people. And as such, I take a real joy in what they are capable of saying, you know, because it's a message. There is a semantics to the outline of a guitar, and we can choose to either accentuate that in this case or just let it be kind of incidental. You know, none of this is one of the joys of the acoustic guitar scene that we're in at the moment is that there's a guitar out there for everyone. You don't have to have one of these. life could be perfect on a Taylor 614 or a Loudon, and that's great. You know, if we all like the same guitar, then we'd be getting them out of slot machines, and that seems a pity. So one of the joys of a bespoke instrument like this is, if you wanted to, it can become a genuine collaboration, and that's what's happened here. So I probably would never have ordered an African Blackwood instrument from anybody else, but I've heard what Matthew and Matthias can do with one. I can count the number of luthiers I trust to put a sound port in an instrument on the fingers of one hand. But look at this. It's my first sound port. Non-cutaway. Bizarre. Yeah. That was trust both ways, you know, because they'd never made a non-cut before. Yeah. I haven't owned a non-cut steel string since about 2002. You know, maybe even 1999. I had a Martin D15, the all mahogany one. Nice. Yeah, man, they're good. So it can be a genuine collaboration, but there are certain areas where you have to trust and believe in the process. Yeah. So when it came to the choice of woods, I'm not one of these people that has to see every piece of African Blackwood that they've got and then go on a forum and say, hey guys, I've got these pictures, what do you think I should choose? Now that makes me feel slightly queasy. I said, can I please have a perfectly quarter-sawn straight grain piece of African Blackwood? Yeah. And they did. In fact, they gave me this sort of set that makes me, feel quite weak at the knees. And then when it comes to the soundboard, I said, look, whatever you think will work in the context of what you do. They only build with Moonspruce now. Yeah. So it was a very simple choice. Those are the bits where I was happy to say, run with it. This back strip, when Matthew first said, hey, should we do a Kintsugi back strip as well? I was thinking, well, maybe not. If it's going to go all the way here as a sort of, what's that going to do? And then he showed me the design. And I was speechless. There's times when you trust the artist and go for it. Yeah. And it's a very beautiful thing. It's like going to a restaurant and saying, chef's choice. Yeah.
I must say, obviously this is at a total different level, this specific guitar. But I have experienced a few horror stories when it comes to a client saying what they want. Guitar arrives, and I can see they're trying to force it, but it's not working.
I know exactly what you mean. I have experienced this process of a bespoke instrument several times in the past. And the key at all times, there are two keys. There's always more than one thing. There's so many things to think about. The keys are knowing what you need. Not what you want, what you think you might like, what you need, and then communicating it to the people or person involved. Do that first. It's the ancient Greek thing, nothis afton, on the Oracle of Delphi, know thyself. So what makes you tick? What do you enjoy as a player? Do some research. First thing to look at is scale length. So go in there, try a triple O, try an OM. See if you can feel any difference between that. See if it bothers you. Try a 14 fret, try a 12 fret. Ask yourself if you're prepared to bleed out every time you change your strings and whether you might want a paddle head instead of a sod head. Try rosewood, try mahogany. And you were saying yourself, get people coming and going, yes, I want a D28. You give them a D18 and they're like, well, it sounds better. Why is that? We've been kind of conditioned to believe that rosewood is somehow superior to mahogany. My guitars, we were talking earlier on, my guitars up till now have been made from a wood that tends to give a more drier and fundamental timbre to the note. In particular, quilted mahogany from the tree and quilted bird's eye maple. This instrument is the first guitar. Actually, it's the first guitar I've ever had in this wood combination, and it's certainly the first African Blackwood guitar I've ever owned. But I've played Casimi guitars in this wood combination before. The first one I played blew me away. Subsequent instruments, I had a dear friend sent over his Casimi C3 fan fret for me to enjoy, and I made some videos with it. Oh my God, that thing was incredible. It wasn't for me in the same way that if we'd gone to see a tailor and we'd ordered, 2 pairs of trousers, mine probably wouldn't have fitted him and his wouldn't have fitted me. You know, it's this level of catering to the client's expectations.
Yeah.
But you have to manage those expectations, and that goes both ways.
Yeah.
I recently did a masterclass at a guitar making school in the UK, and these are students in Newark. Actually, hey guys, if you're watching this, this was really quite moving, actually, Stefan. So imagine this: you've got these young guys who spent 3 years making these guitars, learning to make guitars. Not only that, but they did it during a pandemic. So they were masked up, socially distanced, and that did not stop them from making their first guitars. That shows a resilience, it shows a passion. And let's face it, that's kind of characteristic of the luthier world as well. And I brought my own Costal guitar because I wanted them to have hands-on experience. I didn't want it to be some sort of mythical thing on the internet. I wanted them to be able to absorb and learn from it as much as they possibly could. Like, get a mirror inside, lift it up, show it up to the light, see how the light goes through the top, see which bits are thinner and which bits are thicker. Learn, you know. And then there was a Q&A, and one of them asked, you know, you've got your guitar here, what aspects of a luthier-built guitar are you not prepared to compromise on? And I thought about this, and the only answer I could give was communication. The only thing I'm not prepared to compromise on is communication. Things will happen.
Yeah.
You know, there'll be a sap pocket in the soundboard, or a set of sides will get snapped. Something will happen. There'll be, you know, these are human beings we're dealing with. There may be a family emergency, and things go, you know, it happens. It's how you handle that. You know, and there's been times when it's not an easy conversation to have, but you need to have it, and that is the only time. It's the only thing that I won't compromise on. Is that level of communication, because I've learned from personal hard experience how utterly necessary it is, and how badly things can go wrong without it.
It's just amazing talking about this guitar with you, and
Well, I'm just as amazed as you, Stefan. I mean, it's brand new to me. There'll be times when I just sort of drift off in the conversation and look at it and go, "Oh, really?"
No, it's amazing, and we really just appreciate your time. And
thank you. Yeah, it's good to see you.
Taking us through this. We're definitely going to share some demos.
Yeah, let's do that
with the guys as well. But just want to thank you for your time, making the time. Really appreciate it, man.
My pleasure.
Thanks.